And some of the other major components are professional conduct branch. They're the people that deal with teachers that have criminal matters or other issues that get brought to our attention and need investigation. So they're all qualified investigators and lawyers that deal over there. And then the largest component of VIT is the teacher engagement registration branch. Within that, we have two major functions. We've got engagement, which is our call center, and we've got the application processing component. I'm the manager for the application processing component. So I have a team of about 15 that work directly for me, and we manage the registrations for the 150,000 teachers in the state of Victoria. Tonight, what I'm going to talk through is permission to teach, specifically permission to teach internship, which is the process that you'll be operating under in your schools from the start of next year. There's going to be a quick slide deck about what VIT is, what we do, some of the major rub points that we see in applicant submissions, but then I want to spend the bulk of my time actually walking you through the application process in our training environment, which is called Sandbox, so that you can see what you'll be seeing, and hopefully it won't be as daunting when you get there and you see some of the questions that get asked. Before we start, however, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, for they are the original custodians on the land on which we meet today. So I'm not going to assault your intelligence. You're all very smart people. You've gotten into university, you're doing it at a master's level, so you can read what's written up here. You can read who we are, what our primary function is, and how we define teaching in the state of Victoria. We do break it down into teaching, which is primary and secondary teaching, and early childhood teaching. So we do have two branches. That isn't universal throughout Australia. It's definitely not universal in New Zealand. You might not know this, but we have a very close relationship with the Teaching Regulatory Authority in New Zealand as part of what's called TTMR, which is the Trans-Tasman Mutual Recognition Program. So it allows people to transfer skills between Australia and New Zealand really, really readily. However, in the teaching sphere, it does cause a little bit of issues because they have one teacher register. You're either a teacher or you're not. And if they're an early childhood teacher, technically they get teacher registration here in Victoria, which means an early childhood teacher is allowed to teach VCE by the letter of the law. So there are a few nuances. So VIT's vision is to ensure that Victorian learners have the very best teachers. The term teacher refers to both school and early childhood teacher. And that will be the same throughout this entire presentation when I refer to teacher. Our purpose is to regulate for a highly qualified, competent and reputable teaching profession. For something to be called a profession, it normally has to be regulated. So you'll see, or I've heard of organisations such as APRA, which is the health regulator. The legal system has regulators. All of these professions have a regulator or someone who maintains standards. And that's what VIT is here to do. We essentially set a lower limit about where we won't accept people to be teachers below. And then we work with people that might fall just short to get across that threshold if need be. That's really difficult at the moment because we've got a massive teacher workforce shortage, which is causing some real pain points, especially for really regional schools, but even for schools in closer to the metro area are really struggling to find the right staff to fill the right subjects. So we need to be very cognizant of there can be a line in the sand, but sometimes you might need to go, does this Canadian teacher who speaks French fluently really have to meet our fairly significant English language competency assessment when all they're going to be teaching is French, or do we have a little bit of wiggle room there? So in order to teach in Victoria, a person must hold current registration or PTT, or permission to teach. Permission to teach is an alternative authorisation to teach that exists primarily to address a workforce shortage within Victorian schools. So this was established a couple of years ago to help fill some gaps that were starting to emerge. And it's become more and more prevalent over the last couple of years as that workforce shortage has become so significant. In general terms, PTT is granted to teach a specific subject at a specific school. However, there are exceptions. So sometimes what we find is permission to teach vocational education and training. When it was first established, it was established to support regional schools in getting qualified vet instructors that normally only worked for a day or so a week. But instead of them having registration at 5 or 6 different schools, they could get one type of registration and then move between those schools in a regional location to provide that instruction to the classes as necessary. We've seen a massive push, you might be hearing about it in the news, from the state government and at the federal level as well, to put those vet skills into schools as much as possible. So we're currently having a look at how vet works because we are finding people that are getting vet, and with a PTT vet, you can teach in any Victorian school. So they get it once and then they just basically shop around for what they want. As a PTT holder, you cannot undertake casual relief teaching. That is one of the big takeaways I need you to take from today. When you get your registration for PTT, that is for you to teach the subjects that you've been selected for at the school that is employing you. You can't then work for an agency as a teacher. You can work for an agency in an education support capacity because you're not undertaking the duties of a teacher, but don't try and use your registration number to do casual relief teaching. The agency will cotton onto it really, really quickly, and you'll probably, well, you won't get any shifts, but then they'll probably report you as well. So there are two major categories of PTT. PTT General and PTT Internship are our two biggest ones. So within General, we have a suite of different types. Some of them are specific to schools. So the Victorian School of the Arts, the Japanese School of Melbourne, the Victorian School of Languages, they have very specific rules around permission to teach that go into them because of their unique setting. Vocational education training is another one. The standalone one where we had to set up its own framework is PTT Internship, because an internship is a contractual agreement between you as the applicant, the Department of Education, or whoever your employer is, and your provider. And so VIT puts a lot of onus on your provider, in this case, the University of Melbourne, to do a lot of legwork in making sure that you're a suitable candidate. That is then linked with the school. 75% of our teachers work in the government school. So if I refer to that, that's why. There's a big push there as well. So there's that contractual agreement, and then there's you as well. And you've got to meet certain obligations. And we're sort of there just to remind everyone of what their obligations are and to make sure that they're being met. Some of the other categories that we have: Aboriginal languages, higher education, PTT exchange, where you're one-for-one with someone from another country, teacher tutor, which was developed to assist students in getting back up to speed after the COVID pandemic. JSM is the Japanese School of Melbourne. VCAS is the Victorian College of Arts. VET and the non-secondary school senior providers. That last acronym always gets me. It's about teaching higher education in non-school settings. So a good example is in prisons or in youth work settings like that. I'm going to make this presentation available to you, so you'll see this fact sheet. You'll just be able to click on the hyperlink and be able to grab it. It's got some really good information in it about PTT more generally, and there is some specific links in there for internship as well. What I'm going to quickly go over now are some of our key rub points, and I'll go through this quite quickly because I want to get into actually showing you what you're going to see when you apply for PTT. So there's a couple of ways. POI is proof of identity, VOI is verification of identity. So IDV is Services Victoria. So Services Victoria, you might remember during the COVID pandemic, that little orange app that you had on your phone where you had to scan in for everything and prove that you were vaccinated. They have a way of assessing your identity and basically giving you a tick. You might also have used an app before called MyGovID. I think it's now just called MyID, where you can verify your identity, and it will essentially give you a code that you can link to different services so that they say, yes, we've already verified this person's identity. We don't have to make them do it every single time. VIT is pushing really, really hard to step away from our manual handling of as much work as possible to make it as streamlined for you as applicants as we can. To do that, we used to make you fill in a form that would get all of the proof of identity documents that you had. You then had to go see an authorized person, a pharmacist, a doctor, a lawyer, a postie, and they would have to verify all of your documents. That was becoming really time consuming and cumbersome. So we've now linked up with Services Victoria, and they're going to run, we're trying to push as many people down the IDV process as possible. It's really, really simple. It takes you about 5 minutes if you've got all the requirements, and it makes life so much easier for everyone involved. You also don't then have to download a document, fill in all the forms, and then take everything down somewhere to get someone else to sign off on it for you. If, however, you are unable to do the IDV process, some people won't be able to, and that's fine. We still do have the manual process in place. You will have a document automatically generated for you, and that is what you need to take down to the authorized person with your original documents for them to sign, and they will then sign it. You've then got to scan it and send it back to us. Now, the massive one that we see is address history. So VIT needs an address history for at least the last 5 years and no gaps in dates. So as you can see in the example there, 1st of the 1st, 2019 to the 13th of the 10th, 2022 would need to be followed by a date from the 13th of the 10th, 2022 to present. Now, VIT appreciates that if you've moved internationally, interstate, even just within the state, and it's taken you a little while, there may have been a gap there where you didn't have an address. We are okay if you fill that gap with address at either end, or you just pick one of them and go, I live there. I wasn't there for 7 days, but that's fine. It is simply so that we can identify who you are when we send off your nationally coordinated criminal history check. Overseas criminal record checks. So this will be determined during the application process if you're required to provide one. If you are, and the rules are pretty simple, if you've lived somewhere overseas for a period of greater than 12 months in the last 10 years, and if you're lucky enough to have been over the age of 18, so basically have to have lived overseas for 12 months in the last 10 years, and you had to have been over the age of 18 at the time of it occurring, you'll need to provide us with an overseas criminal record check. That doesn't mean short-term holidays. It just means if you had your mail going somewhere overseas and you said, yep, I was living in Thailand, we're going to need a CRC from the Thai government. Applicants to provide a Department of Home Affairs approved criminal record check. So there is a link just there that you'll see, and it will be part of this presentation when it gets sent to you. If you click on that link, it'll take you to the Department of Home Affairs website. You click on offices outside of Australia, you click on the relevant country, press police check, and it will prompt you through that national jurisdiction's process for getting a police check. If it's a really, really small window that we need one for, we do have a secondary option, which uses a company called AIS International. I would advise you that if you can get your hands on a Home Affairs one, try and do that. They're normally a bit cheaper. They do take a bit longer, however. So there's a bit of a balance there between, if you want it just done and dusted, AIS might be the way to go. If you've got a little bit of time up your sleeves, which you guys do at the moment, Department of Home Affairs is a bit cheaper. As you go through the application process, your case officer will be in contact with you if they want to push you down one way or the other, but it's ultimately your decision. The other big one is English language competency. VIT has some fairly strict English language competency requirements. Here is what the basic rules are. I'll show you where it is on our website as well, so you can familiarize yourself if this is going to be an issue. If you've lived in Australia your entire life, done all of your education here, it won't be an issue. You've also had to pass an English language competency assessment to get into your current degree. So that is taken into consideration. If you don't quite meet these standards now, we can, in some circumstances, operate you under an exemption. So it's not going to be a stop to you undertaking your internship now. However, we are unable to bend these rules when it comes to you applying for teacher registration. So at the end of your grant of permission to teach under the internship program, when you graduate, your next step to be able to continue to teach is to apply for full registration. You must meet the English language competency requirements for us to grant you registration. If you don't, we'll have to find another solution until you can. So what I'm going to do now is quickly take you through what's known as a sandbox demonstration of what we need to go through. So I'm going to share my screen again, which is going to be this one, and then share. Okay. So just got to wait for the little part at the top to disappear. There we go. Of course, it's right in the wrong spot. Typical. When you go to the MyVIT website, I'm just going to drag this down a bit so you can see what I'm talking about. You'll go to the MyVIT website to log into your portal. You'll come here and you'll come across to the top where it just says sign in, and you'll go to MyVIT login. Here you will put in your login details. Now, your login details are going to be provided to you in an email once your provider has submitted to us a document in the first place. Permission to teach takes place in 2 stages. The first stage is what's known as a teaching position. The teaching position is provided to us through your university. It identifies who you are, the school that you'll be employed at, and what subjects you'll be studying. There's a bit of other information that's in there that we sort of talk to the university about beforehand, and then it's essentially copied and pasted into everyone's. We will quickly go through that, make sure that it's linked to the right person. So if at Melbourne Uni, they would go, this one's for Mark Betts to teach history, geography, and economics. We make sure we link it to the right person in our system. And when it's approved, you will automatically have an email sent to the email address that's part of that teaching position. Now, this I can't stress to you enough. If your university uses your university email address, you've got to keep checking it for that information. That is the only email address that we will have on file for you at the start. So that's what you need to be checking to get the hyperlink to come and log into your account. If your university allows you to provide a personal email address, please keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on your junk folder as well. We normally don't get sent to junk, but sometimes we can. And just keep an eye on it. Follow the links. It'll ask you to log in, like most login services, Netflix, whatever you've got. You just got to provide us some basic details. And then it will open up to a screen that looks exactly like this. Okay. And yours is right in the middle. Apply for PTT. Okay. PTT, permission to teach. That's what you're doing. Do not click on apply for registration. If you click on this tile, it'll quickly load for you, and then it will take you into this screen here of managing your permission to teach. You will only have one teaching position down here. Okay. So yours will sit down here and you'll be able to click on it and go through the process. If you click on the drop-down arrow, you'll be able to see continue application, right? Or yours will say start application. This is not the first presentation I've done, I'm sorry. So I've got a few. Now, the first item that you'll see is essentially a series of conditions that you need to read and understand. By clicking this, it is a bit of a contractual understanding that you've actually read what's written above it and you are going to abide by it. And it essentially boils down to, we're giving you permission to teach, to undertake the duties of a teacher, acknowledging that you're not a fully registered or qualified teacher yet. You are only to teach the subjects on your grant at the school that's been provided and nothing else. That nothing else includes that you can go on school camps, you can go on excursions, but you do not count as part of the teacher ratio. Okay, so don't let the school force you down that pathway. They're not allowed to. You'll then just click next, and I'll ask you a few more questions. Have you undertaken any higher education, including any incomplete initial teacher education qualifications? You're all undertaking a master's program, so you should all be answering yes to this. Do you have any teaching, trade, or industry experience? If you've done casual relief teaching, if you've done any work as a learning support officer, that's really important that we get that information just so that we have a full picture of who we're interacting with. This is a smart form, so it won't let you progress if you don't click on the buttons correctly. You'll then be brought to a screen that looks a lot like this. The big difference is that all of your tiles down this side here will be this blue color. This is a smart form, so you're unable to submit it until all of these turn green. So you have to go through each one, turn them all green, then press submit, and we'll get the information required. One of the first ones that you'll be asked to provide are your qualifications. So in here, come in, put in your qualifications as you've got them. Put in every higher education qualification that you've got. We don't really care about barista certificates or anything like that. Anything that's relevant to you being a teacher. So here you can see I've got a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Delhi. I don't. My Bachelor of Arts is from the University of New South Wales. And my ITE is a Master of Teaching from Monash Uni. Please don't judge me. I swear I'm a nice person. And I've put in another one as well, just the MBA from Deakin as just a bit of an extra in there if you've got them. But put in anything. If you've got a PhD, please put it in. And what you'll be able to do when you add qualification, you'll be able to tell us what sort of qualification it is and how long it went for, where it was from. So in this case, Australia, Victoria will be your primary load. Your provider, you can just type in where it's from. It is a smart form, so we'll pick up most of the big universities. If you can't find it, especially if it's an international one, I can't find my provider, and you'll be able to write it in free text. You can then pick your degree from up here. This is not always a complete list. We acknowledge that. Again, my qualification is not listed. You'll be able to put in what you need. I'm just going to pick something, Master of Music. I wish I was that talented. And then you just put in your start dates and end dates. Let's go the 1st of October. And then we'll go back to 2022 and say I graduated then as well. Or if you haven't completed it and you're undertaking other study currently, I haven't completed this course, and it just won't ask you for a completion date. It'll change it to expected completion date for you. Length of the qualification in full time. So not how long it's taken you, how long it's meant to take you if you studied full time. And if you've received any credit for that. So you can see I've actually indicated that mine took 3 years, but it's a 2-year degree. And then you need to provide evidence of completion or an academic transcript. Now, an academic transcript, when you provide it, needs to be an official academic transcript, not an unofficial one. And they normally say that at the top, this is an unofficial academic transcript. And it's normally just for you to see how your marks have been over the last couple of semesters. We need an official academic transcript. If you completed your degree, you should have a copy of that and just be able to scan it in. Evidence of completion is your testament, which is that pretty piece of paper that you put on your wall and say, I'm awesome, I've done a degree. You don't have to provide us the evidence of completion. If you give us the academic transcript, you can submit one under academic transcript. So you submit your academic transcript as the academic transcript, and you can submit the academic transcript again as evidence of completion. Because normally on them, what they'll say is this person has completed the following degree. And then we can see that you've done all of the units and it's very easy for us to verify. So you can select either one, and there's a whole list of them in here. A lot of them won't be relevant to you unless you're an early childhood teacher. But you can then pop that in there. So select whatever it is. Let's call it a academic transcript, upload your file, and you can select a file to upload. As you can see, it won't let you submit your qualification until you provide that information. Okay, so we've tried to build the system so it's as user-friendly as possible. And I know that sometimes might feel like we're putting on the brakes, but try and have all of this information gathered before you start so that you can just drag and drop it all into one file and get it done. All right. So once you've submitted your undergraduate degree and any other qualifications that you may have, your qualifications will go green for review with a tick next to it, which is awesome. English language competency will only come up if the system recognizes that you are required to give it. So the reason that I put it, it's come up for me here is you might have noticed in my qualifications, I have the Bachelor of Arts from the University of Delhi. So the system has recognized that I've undertaken some of my higher education overseas. So it's then asked me to provide English language competency results. We have 2 accepted English language competency tests. We accept the ISLPR and the IELTS test. If you're on our website, you can come to register to teach. And over here under qualifications and prerequisites, we have English language competency. And so here you can see our policy. And then down here is just a breakdown of what the recommended or what the score standards are for both tests. So it's 8s and 7s for IELTS and it's 4s across the board for ISLPR, if that is relevant to you. Okay, once you've submitted that, the system won't check your results. It'll just acknowledge that you've got something there. If you haven't sat an English language competency test yet and you are going to need to, please speak to Bianca and I'll give Bianca some words, and we have a special basically phrase that you put onto a Word document and put in there, and that acknowledges to us that we know that there's going to be an exemption that goes along with this, but we can still process your application in the meantime. The next big one is your proof of identity. Now, for your proof of identity, you are required to provide as I showed you before, a number of different types of documentation. So we've got a commencement document, primary use, and 2 by secondary use. Commencement of identity, normally a birth certificate is the best way to go here. Primary use is a driver's license or a passport, and secondary use is a Medicare card, enrollment on the electoral roll, that sort of thing. So valid proof of identity documents, there's a nice big list of them for you here that you can scroll through and have a look at. Big one here is invalid proof of identity documents. And for all that I stand for, please, if you take nothing else away from today, please take what I've highlighted on the screen. We do not accept working with children check cards as a valid form of ID. I cannot stress that enough. Every time there's always someone that submits it and we can't accept it. These rules are not based on VIT. Your Nationally Coordinated Criminal History Check is run by the Australian Criminal Investigative Commission, or ACIC. It's them that set the rules, and it's them that have decided that the working with children check card is not valid. So we're not trying to be difficult. We try to be as helpful as we can, but we do have to work within the bounds of what ACIC requires. So Here you can go through the process of confirming your identity. Now, I have submitted these documents already, so I can't show you as perfectly as I'd like to. When you log in to do this, you'll have a little spiel at the top here that says you have two options. You can do it manually, or you can do it through the IDV process, the Identity Victoria or Services Victoria, which is the same. It'll take you to the same place. Please follow that link. It requires you to provide the same documents, but you provide it directly to them. It's a very user-friendly service. There's a little bit of using your camera to take photos of you. Please do it against a white background in a well-lit room, and it will identify who you are straight away. It will then link back to us because part of the information is that I'm doing this for Victorian Institute of Teaching. And what we can then do is we then get all of the relevant information. We don't get the documentation if it's been done correctly. So your documentation actually will never come to us. What we will get is a little screen that will say, Mark has provided his birth certificate, a driver's license, his Medicare card, and a Centrelink card. We are verified. We are happy that this is actually the same person. We've checked all of his names. Their ID is good to go. And we can run your criminal record check based off that. So please try and do it through that process. It explains to you what your phone requirements are and your internet service provider requirements are as well. If you've got a smartphone that's less than 5 years old, then you'll be able to do that process quite comfortably. We only find about 10% of people really struggle with it. And for those of you that do fall into that category, there is our manual process as I described before. So once you've done proof of identity, in this case, because I'm doing it the old way, it'll ask you to generate a verification of identity form. It'll go through that. It will pop up as a download just in your screen automatically. Download that. Please fill in any details that are missing. Sometimes what will happen is that it won't transcribe across your passport number or its expiry date. Please fill in that information before you take it to your authorized person to sign it. We do find a lot of authorized persons who will just sign what is essentially a blank verification of identity form. We will send it back to you and say, sorry, we can't accept this. We need you to actually verify who you are properly. Once you've completed proof of identity and verification of identity, the criminal record check box will appear above it. So don't be surprised if all of a sudden a new blue box appears above where you've worked your way through. When you go through this one's not going to play because it does actually want to try and connect to ACIC. It will just ask you for your consent to undertake a criminal record check under the Education Training Reform Act of 2006. That's a requirement to be a teacher. You just need to say that I acknowledge that that's what we'll be doing. And when you have run a criminal record check and you're granted registration, we have what's known as a weekly wash with the Victoria Police, which is every week, the Victoria Police run the entire register of teachers of Victoria against new criminal offences, and they'll just provide us an update. So, for example, I'm a registered teacher, and during the week I get picked up for DUI. That gets registered on the police system, and then when they do the weekly wash, Victoria Police will come back and say, hey, person by the name of Mark Betts, who we believe is a registered teacher, has come up for DUI. Is it the same person? They'll do a quick check, go, yes, it is the same person. And then if it's severe enough, VIT will reach out. If it's a minor offence, we just sort of go, okay, you've now got a bit of a criminal matter. As long as it doesn't impact you being a teacher or the safety and welfare of children, we sort of just manage it. We let you know that we're aware of it. One of the next steps you'll have is proof of identity, name history, and address history. So for your name history, this is, it indicates to you here the different names or a couple of different examples for you. So, you know, I was born Mark Alexander Buchanan Smith. I then got married and I changed my name to Mark Alexander Buchanan Betts. I'm now divorced. So if I changed my name back again, I would go, my birth name was Smith. I was then a formal previous name was Betts, and my current legal name is back to Smith. But if I'm known throughout the community as Pongo the Clown, then I've got to put that in as an alias as well, okay? So that way when we do our criminal record check, we can check against everything that you would be known as. Address history, as I spoke about during the presentation, it's all about making sure there are no gaps. If you've lived in the same house for the last 30 years, that's fantastic. You just put it in once and we've got everything we need. If you've been moving around a little bit, we just need to make sure there's no gaps in between it. It can get a little bit fiddly sometimes, especially when you've done a lot of moving. just try and make sure that there's a start date, there's an end date. Once, if you move to a new location, the end date here and the start date for the next location are the same date. That's all we need out of that one. And because that they've got more than 5 years, that's now gone green. If you selected yes, you've got experience, you'll have to answer some experience questions. It literally just asks you some really generic questions about what experience do you have as a teacher. And there will be some suitability questions involved as well. So it'll ask you a series of fairly basic questions. Have you ever held registration as a teacher, either here in Victoria or another jurisdiction? Depending on what your answers are, answer them truthfully. It shouldn't, I'm assuming most people will answer no to these, especially for internships. Otherwise, you would have held registration, you'd be returning. Professional history, if you've transferred from another career, so you were a lawyer or a doctor, please select yes. We're just going to ask for your registration details, and we have an agreement with those agencies to see, just to make sure that you weren't struck off the register for malpractice or anything like that. And have you ever been refused? Now, some people select yes for this when they go, oh, I applied to be a psychologist, but I didn't quite have the qualifications necessary. And so therefore they refused me. You can tell us about that, but we're not going to stop you being a teacher because you applied for something and then you understood what the rules were and go, oh, actually, I was never really suitable for that anyway. It's more a case of if you applied to be a healthcare professional and they turned around and said, no, because we have issues with your character, that's something we need to know about. Now we're talking about impairments. Please read this very, very carefully. An impairment is something that seriously affects your ability to practice as a teacher and includes conditions that, and they fall in, or they fit sort of this category: long-lasting, or relapsing, remitting, or degenerative, require significant adjustments to your duties as a teacher, or relate to substance or alcohol abuse. So, for example, me wearing glasses is not an impairment to my ability. It's not a serious impairment for my ability to be a teacher. Wearing a hearing aid is not a serious impairment. If you declare it to us, we're not going to do anything about it. We'll go, thank you for telling us. That's really great, but we don't think this actually significantly impacts your ability to be a teacher. That's more of an employment decision to make sure that if for whatever reason your hearing aid fails, you've got supports in place that make sure that your students are safe in the classroom. Charges or convictions. Are you currently charged with any criminal offences in Victoria or elsewhere? And have you ever been found guilty here or elsewhere? Select yes or no. In this one, we prefer it if you overshare, right? We find that a lot of people, no one's perfect, so we're not here to judge you, and we're not going to stop you if you've got a minor offence. If anyone's from Tasmania are fantastic at putting every little driving offence you've ever had on your criminal history. So the number of people that we come out of Tasmania who have, a speeding fine for being 5 kilometres over the limit is amazing. But if you've ever done that, please select yes, and then you've just got to give us a couple of details about what it was. If you've ever been to court and the decision was struck out, withdrawn, we are one of the authorised agencies that still get to see those, and that's because of the vulnerable nature of the people that we interact with in the students. So don't think that because it was struck out, withdrawn, it's something that we're not going to be able to see when we run the criminal record check on you. Now, if you were convicted 25 years ago and it just slipped your mind, that's not the end of the world. Again, if it does pop up, we're just going to reach out to you, and if it's a big enough issue, and say, hey, can you provide us a little bit more information about this, please? So we just know exactly what we're getting into when we say yes to you being a teacher in a classroom. So we're then going to move through some reportable conduct. You should all be either aware who the Commissioner for Children and Young People is, or as soon as you start your course, you'll be very, very aware who CCYP is and the reportable conduct scheme. If the best way for me to explain these questions is if you don't understand what they're talking about, that's probably a really good thing, because if you've had to interact with this, you know exactly what's going on here. So go through these. It'll ask you about working with Children Check, working with Screenings Act. Again, if you don't know what those are, you wouldn't have had to have dealt with one. A suitability panel. And then it will ask you about overseas criminal record checks. You must outline your overseas residency. Have you lived inside of another country other than Australia in the last 10 years? Your question may look slightly differently. We've only literally in the last 24 hours just updated this portal, and sometimes it takes a little while to sync through to our training background. Resided in another country for a period of greater than 12 months is what yours should say. And if you select yes to that, it'll tell you to provide more details. So I'll then say, were you over the age of 18? Did you reside in that country for 12 months or more? We've tried to compile that all into one question, so it's a bit less cumbersome for everyone involved. Then once you've filled in your experience component, this last unit will go green for you and you'll be able to submit. Now, once you've clicked submit, we get to the fun part, which is where you pay for your registration. You pay for the privilege to be a teacher in Victoria. We do actually have one of the cheaper registration fees in the country. Every year we get asked about this at annual registration time, which runs until the 30th of September. So by the 30th of September every year, every teacher has to have been paid up for registration. Normally that period starts in around mid-August. Okay, so in about mid-August, you can start to expect to get an email saying, hey, your registration's due. Click here to pay and to finalize. Registration should be really, really easy. Okay, 150,000 teachers in Victoria. We only interact with about 3,000 to 4,000 of them, and normally they're for really, really minor matters. Okay. Annual registration, if you have nothing to declare and it's like, I've not been picked up by the police, I have no CCYP matters, I have done all my professional development as required under the Act, which all of you will do. Schools are really, really big on that now, so your PD shouldn't be an issue. Just make sure you keep your evidence, because if we pick you up for an audit, then that's something you need to have. And then you just go through to the end. At the end of it, you pay your $130 odd for registration, and the whole system's automatic. And as soon as it's done, you get your updated registration for the next year. It's really, really simple for you. We are working as hard as we can to make this as user-friendly for your user experience as friendly as possible. So as you go through this, if you've got any issues, please don't hesitate to reach out to Bianca and say, hey, look, I'm really struggling with this. Now, Bianca can't fix it for you. And we do have a pretty good relationship with our providers, so they have a lot of information. Then they're going to reach straight out to me, and you might actually find that I might jump into your account and fix something, and you might get an email directly from me saying, hi team, I've just fixed this for you, please try again. Email me back directly if it's still not working, and I'll have another look at it and see what else we can do. So don't be terrified if you get an email from us. We do try to be as friendly as possible. We have contact details on our website. The call center is open every day of the week. We're open from 9 till 4 every day except public holidays. The team are very, very knowledgeable. We're based out of Dockland, so we're right near Marvel Stadium. That's where our call center is as well. There's about 20 members of the team that work in the call center. And if you've got a question that's really specific to your application, you can just say, hey, can I please speak to my case manager, please? You might not be able to talk to them then and there because they could be busy, but we'll get you details and we'll be able to give you a call back. Bianca, I might call it stumps there and stop sharing, and we might be able to answer some questions quickly so people can get to dinner or get kids to bed or whatever duties people have.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Mark. So that was a lot of information. I'm sure everyone agrees. But thankfully, if you missed it at the start, we did let everyone know that we are recording this session. So once the session finishes, the recording will be uploaded. We'll communicate that out to you all tomorrow. A few questions have come through about just the general employment process. Because this is a PTT webinar, apologies, but I'm not going to go into any answers for those questions today, but please rest assured we will provide answers. We may even look to creating another session because I know there's a few common questions, so we might see if Adam Taylor, the course coordinator, is available shortly to perhaps do a short session with everybody with an update on the process. So I'll go through a couple of the questions now for Mark about PTT. Now we had a couple about the teaching experience section, Mark. So in terms of what people might put in that section, does that include if they've done some tertiary teaching? So perhaps they've been academics or tutors in the university or the tertiary sector, or is it only for school teaching?
No, please, if you've got tertiary teaching experience, please let us know. Now, it's I'll be honest with you, it's not going to make or break your application, but what it does do is it builds a profile for you with VIT. So if down the track we do need to, for whatever reason, when it comes to your initial registration, for example, when you go from permission to teach to full registration, we've already got that information about you. So we've built the picture there already. The whole process with VIT is that we try and get the information out of you once and then sort of don't want to have to keep coming back to you to get it again and again. So when it comes, you'll do a fair bit of work now in this initial application. When you then go to apply for initial registration, it should be really quick. It should be a case of nothing's changed. Now all I need to do is wait for Melbourne University, and the university will provide your evidence of completion. So yes, I'm going to pick the first name I see. Julian Scarf has completed his degree, and here is his evidence that he's completed that degree. And we literally just go in and go, Julian to Julian's profile. Everything is now ticked. This person has provisional registration to be a teacher. So if you've got all the information in there, the more the merrier. It doesn't have to be War and Peace. You can just write a one-liner going, I was a university academic from this year to this year in this field of study. If it's relevant to what you're going to be teaching, even better. So I'm a history student or I'm a history teacher. If I did academic teaching for history, it builds the picture that that is a suitable subject string for you. On the flip side, if you were an academic in, say, agriculture, but the subjects that you've been picked up to teach are mathematics and English, having that there means that in the background or at a later date, if your school comes back and go, actually, we really want to stand up an ag program and this person would be great for it, we can go, oh, are they suitable? Are they not? We can look at your profile and go, actually, they were an agriculture university lecturer for 10 years. Yes, they're more than suitable. We'll add the subject to your subject string and you can carry on. Because remember, PTT can only be for specific subjects at a specific school. So having that information just saves us reaching out to you a little bit later on.
Great, thanks, Mark. So then another common question we had about was qualifications in terms of what qualifications should students be entering into this section. I'm guessing that it would be qualifications that are completed and probably the qualifications that have led them to come into this internship program, but please, over to you, Mark.
No, that about nails it. Most of you should know through the process that you're going through to get into this program, what subjects the school is seeking you to teach. If your qualification is directly relevant to that, provide it. If it's not, there's no need to at this stage. If you think it could be, so you've got a graduate certificate in psychology or youth work, for example, maybe that could be something that you add in. But to keep it as clean as possible, only that which is relevant to getting you into this degree and teaching the subjects that you've agreed to with the school when you sought employment.
Great. We've got, I think these are similar questions. This one was around English language. So the question was, for PTT registration, do we need IELTS or PTE score will be valid?
So PTE scores won't be. It needs to be either IELTS or ISLPR. They're the only two we accept. And we're constantly reviewing those as well. So we don't do the Pearson assessment. There's another couple as well that are out there. We only do IELTS and ISLPR. If you do need one, IELTS is pretty good. It's you can do it online. And there's also the case that if you are unsuccessful in one area, if you then book within 60 days of your original test date, you can resit just that one area, which is really helpful. Having valid English language competency assessment is very, very helpful to you because it means that your application will be assessed really, really quickly if it's needed. If you're unable to get that, we can consider you on a case-by-case basis, possibly for an exemption, depending on a whole series of factors. And that will be a discussion that VIT has with you and your provider or the university to see where it's going to go. But like I said during the start of the presentation, you must meet the English language competency assessments before you'll be considered for full registration.
Great, thank you. There's a couple of questions that sort of relate to around, I suppose, creating your VIT account and logging in. So I'm going to summarize and sort of smush them all together. But in terms of creating the VIT account, and just correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but how it will work is with the PTT application, the University of Melbourne will kick things off for you. And we will do that once you've got confirmed employment. We've issued you your unconditional offer and you've accepted that. So what we ask is that when you get your unconditional offer, please accept that as soon as you can, because that's the trigger for us to say, great, job confirmed, acceptance into the program has been confirmed, we'll now commence your PTT application. So we then kick off that process. We fill in the details that we need to fill in with VIT, and then that will trigger, and this is where Mark, just if I'm saying the wrong thing, please correct me, that will trigger then VIT to email you to say, now it's time for you to create your account and get on with the process. Is that right, Mark? Have I got that sort of?
Yep, that's 100% correct. Now, the way that the University of Melbourne run it is actually a bit more user-friendly for you, because you should be able to provide your own email address. So it'll be less cumbersome for you having to try and log into university portals to try and find emails from us, especially when you're going to have 30 or 40 from different aspects of the university trying to get you involved in things. But yes, that's exactly correct. It starts with the university. Once we've checked it and we're happy with it, you'll get an email from us with follow the bouncing ball, please, for us to get you a portal. And once your portal's set up, you can start going through the process of submitting all the information required to get your application submitted to us.
Yeah. And there was a question there saying from someone said they didn't have a university email address at the moment. That's correct. Some of you won't. And the reason for that is if you've never studied at the University of Melbourne, you won't get, you usually aren't given your university email address until you get an unconditional offer and you accept that. So if you haven't got a university email address at the moment, don't worry about that. We will use the email address that we have on file for you when we're creating this PTT application. So please don't stress if you haven't got your university email at the moment. I think for the majority of people, we will be using your personal email because, we have a smaller cohort who are transferring over from the Master of Teaching Secondary at the moment. So I think that hopefully would answer those people's questions about logging in and when to start. So a few people had said, can we start the PTT before our employment's secured? So I hope that's answered that for you, is that no, you don't need to do it before employment's secured. It's that step that needs to be taken once employment is secured.
Correct.
Now, just having a little look over, we're getting pretty close to time. So thank you everyone for holding in there.
While you're doing that quick check, I'm just going to quickly answer. Julian, to answer your question, yes. I didn't read all of it, but I saw the start of it. Just let us know. If we need any more information from you, we'll reach out. We'll have a chat to you about it. It is not a game ender for you by any means of the imagination. We just need to make sure that everything's good to go. Please be upfront and honest with us. It's much easier for us to be on the front foot with these sort of things than trying to find information later on down the track.
And there was a question from someone who already has a VIT account with PTT recently.
Yep.
Will they be linked up, Mark, or will they get a
So what will happen for that individual, and this one, we need to manage these ones a little bit more delicately, because what happens is you can only have registration one at a time. So when you apply, we will actually not approve, we'll recommend your teaching position, and that will go back through to your account. So what you would have done in the first instance when you applied for PTT General, it'll be exactly the same process, although like you would have seen on my screen, most of yours will already be filled in. There might be one or two extra little bits that you have to do. But when you make your submission to the application for PTT internship, we will not approve it yet. And we won't do that because as soon as we approve it, you become a registered teacher, you go on the teacher register, and you're technically approved to teach. We can't future date them. So what that means is that whatever PTT you're currently operating under would have to stop straight away. And we don't want to do that in the middle of term 4. So what we'll do is we'll wait until the end of term 4 this year. So just after Christmas, normally, we'll then approve a whole chunk of them. There's normally a fairly big cohort, a couple of hundred every year, that transition from PTT General onto an internship. And we just do that to make sure that you've got your valid registration, but we don't then accidentally put you into a position where you are undertaking unregistered teaching practice when we've said you're going to be teaching at Haileybury College and you're currently at Caulfield, and all of a sudden it gets a little bit messy. So don't be surprised if yours doesn't get approved straight away. We're doing it so you can continue to teach where you currently are.
Thanks, Mark. There's a couple of questions around, is VIT and PTT registration tax deductible? Now, I'd expect, Mark, you probably can't answer that question unless you're an accountant, but that's usually the advice that I would give. Any questions on tax is speak to your accountant.
But it is a professional registration fee. So in most cases, those sort of things can be. Up to you, talk to an accountant.
Yeah, great. So yeah, just bear that in mind, everyone, that it's best to speak to your accountants if you're wondering about tax deductions. Now, I think I have got the majority of questions. Apologies if I've missed anyone. I'm just checking.
If there are any additional questions, teams, please don't hesitate. I'm going to throw Bianca under the bus here. Send an email to Bianca, reach out via whatever means necessary. Probably towards the end of this week, I'll get an email from her with any additional questions, and I'll get you answers back as quickly as I can. Like I said, we try to be as friendly as possible. A lot of people, and if you've been into a staff room or when you get into a staff room, we cop a lot of grief. We're not perfect, but we are trying really, really hard. And we do want to help you out as much as possible. So please reach out, use the call center, call the teacher hotline. The team will be able to give you as much information as possible. But specific to these ones, please reach out to Bianca, and Bianca will be able to get me any pertinent questions that I can give you some advice on.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So if, like Mark was saying, please send us an email to the FOE-teaching internship email address, or if you are able to use the inquiry forms that we, sometimes the links will only work if you can log in with student details. You can submit an inquiry as well. Apologies to anybody. There's been a few comments come through saying that they've tried to email us at the FOE teaching internship email address and it hasn't been answered. I really apologise for that. We've tried to get through all of the emails that have come through, but if you've slipped through the cracks, please re-forward the email and we will get on top of that for you. And just to those who have been asking other questions around the MITSI program in general and the employment process, vacancies and have people secured employment, like I said, we'll send out another communication to everybody tomorrow, and we'll look at what the capacity is of Adam Taylor, the course coordinator, to potentially hold just another short session for those who may have questions. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time. And thank you, Mark, because I'm sure you've probably done this session a few times and it's probably become a bit of a process for you, but we really appreciate it. And as I said, we have recorded the session, so we will send you the recording link tomorrow.
Thank you very much, team. Please have a lovely evening. I'm more than happy to do these because it makes my life much easier at the other end. So have a great evening. Good luck to you all with your careers and where they may take you. And hopefully we see you around in the future.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. Cheers.